So I watched 2 other good movies in April that weren't Morbius or Secrets of Donkey Blore. See, I also watch good movies. I'm not a masochist. One of them was the new DreamWorks animated movie, The Bad Guys. Ever since I started editing for that one guy that talks about Shark Tale, I've kind of become more appreciative of DreamWorks. This is an animation studio that definitely makes some cringy and even downright awful products, but when they make something good, they really knock it out of the park. Some of my favorite animated movies of the 2000s are from DreamWorks, and I think it's important to recognize that. With that said, they've kind of been on this weird limbo over the past couple of years. Through it being tossed around different studios and focusing a lot on franchises like Trolls and Boss Baby, DreamWorks hasn't been making a ton of good stuff. Which is why watching The Bad Guys was a breath of fresh air for me. Now before anyone gets the wrong idea, I can't say The Bad Guys is flawless or even really technically all that good. There are some things that I genuinely think actively hurt the film from being truly great, and I'll talk about those in a bit. But even as negative as I'm going to sound when talking about this movie, I think it's a step in the right direction for the studio. And as I said in my Letterboxd review, I would much prefer movies like this over stuff akin to Boss Baby. Anyway, as for the movie itself, I had a fun time watching it. The animation was easily the highlight as it was stylistic and clean and fast-paced. In terms of wacky and stylistic animation, I kind of preferred this over Turning Red. The action wasn't groundbreaking, but the movie had such a speed to it that it was still entertaining to watch. I also thought these characters were pretty funny, and the actors did a really good job for the most part. Sam Rockwell and Mark Maron were great as Mr. Wolf and Mr. Snake respectively. Craig Robinson and Anthony Ramos actually got me to laugh at several points. This is probably the least annoyed I've been with Awkwafina in a movie. Basically, the main cast worked pretty well for what they were given. I can't say it was mind-blowing comedic stuff, but for a kids movie, it worked a hell of a lot better than I was expecting. With that said, the character writing does get a lot messier with the other characters, and that leads into spoilers, so if you truly don't want to be spoiled for a kids movie, then skip to the Northman discussion. But I will tell you, the twist isn't really all that surprising if you've seen any movie ever. So at the beginning, one of the characters mentions offhand that another criminal called the Crimson Paw was never officially caught, and me being not a child, I knew immediately that would come back in some way. And yes, it does, though to be fair, not in the way I thought. See, I thought Professor Marmalade would be revealed as the twist villain and that he was the Crimson Paw the whole time. He was putting on this whole ruse to eventually steal the meteor or whatever, and so then that would be his final big heist. Unfortunately, that's not the case. He just so happened to be some random generic bad guy who is evil because he's a parody of Elon Musk. As it turns out, the Crimson Paw was the governor the whole time, which kinda ruins the movie. Diane the whole movie is the typical no-nonsense female counterpart to the mischievous male character Mr. Wolf. She's not the most interesting character, but her presence serves a purpose as both a reminder to Wolf that a better life is possible, and being the one in charge of granting the bad guys their eventual freedom should they succeed. But then that's thrown out the window when it's revealed she's also a criminal, so everything she stands for when being on the moral high ground is complete bullshit. But the movie never calls her out for it. If anything, they glorify her as being this Black Widow, Captain Marvel, Ray from Nowhere badass girl boss that makes her even less interesting as a character. It also actively hurts the logic of the film. She's both the governor, but also the super secret criminal mastermind. Also, she never gets any repercussions for all the crimes she's committed. Why do the bad guys get to go to jail for all the stuff they did then? Why does she get absolved? I know this is just a kids movie made for dumb babies, but I feel like even kids would be confused by all of this. I guess the lesson here is you can commit all these crimes, but as long as you're a woman in political power, then you get away with it. Great message, DreamWorks. And yet it's still not as offensive as anything in Trolls. Now, despite my gripes with the ending, the stuff I like are all still present. As I said, the animation is still amazing and makes for a fun watch. There's definitely going to be people who adore this film. Hell, most people who have seen it already seem to really like it. But as for me, I thought it was decent at best with some glaring flaws. Still, with my thoughts on animated films as of late, I'll take decent over annoying or mind-numbingly horrendous. Another movie I saw was The Northman from director Robert Eggers. Now, I was looking forward to this movie since it's from the same director as The Lighthouse, one of my absolute favorite movies ever. I don't often like hyping myself up for new movies since I've been disappointed before, so I can't say I was unbelievably hyped for this. I definitely was intrigued to see it, so I avoided watching any trailers, and I think that was for the best because I had a blast watching this movie while knowing little as possible. I definitely think this is my least favorite Eggers film thus far, but with his impressive filmography, cinematography, it was still pretty fucking excellent. What I liked most about this film was just how simple it was at its base core. It's basically the same story as Hamlet and The Lion King with the whole avenging dead father story, but it's still able to differentiate itself from those two. It's a story about honor and revenge, but it never feels like it's lecturing you on those themes, but rather watching a slice of someone's experiences forgotten to time. This is also a time period I had yet to see portrayed in a film in a way that interested me. I'd say this is everything I wanted from something like Robert Zemeckis' Beowulf. And that's because the world felt raw and dirty and overall lived in. Eggers has this fascination with other time periods and getting actors to speak in ways that seem historically accurate, which could easily come across as cheesy and gimmicky, but he knows how to make sure the characters come across as clearly as possible. Yes, it's cool that the actors in The Witch and The Lighthouse talk funny, but they also do so while playing unique and interesting characters. Willem Dafoe isn't just talking like a sea captain, he legit feels like a real person who existed at that point in time. And that's definitely the case with this movie. All these actors do a great job at portraying these very crude and even downright animalistic characters. Alexander Skarsgard does an immaculate job at making this simple character seem larger than life. And it's not just from the dialogue and facial expressions, but also in the physical performance. He's doing a lot of screaming and fighting, and it makes for one hell of a ride. The rest of the cast was fantastic too. Anya Taylor-Joy was amazing as usual, Ethan Hawke was fantastic, Nicole Kidman was great. I was surprised by how little Dafoe and Bjork were in it because I really enjoyed their characters, but even from what little we got of them, they were both still fantastic. If I had to pinpoint anything I didn't like, I'd probably say the pacing was a little weird. There were times where it felt like the movie dragged a bit, and I wasn't always exactly sure if the slowness of certain scenes was necessary. It may have been because this was my first watch through, and perhaps it becomes a bit more breezy on a second viewing. I also wasn't sure how to feel about a lot of the off-screen gore. I'm not sure if it was an artistic choice or limitations of either budget or what an R rating can actually get you, but I felt that stuff could have been wilder. Maybe I'm just a sick fuck and I've been desensitized, but I won't lie, I was still kinda let down a little by the violence. Now with that said, I am in no way saying that harms the movie in any way. It's still unbelievably good, and there's a ton of violence that was filmed in excellent ways. There's a shot during a pivotal moment at a volcano that is so cool and so becoming my wallpaper on my laptop when a high-res version is available. It was cooler than the fight on Mustafar in Revenge of the Sith. Yeah, I said it. Well, that about does it for my thoughts on The Northman. As I said, this is definitely my least favorite Eggers film thus far, but I still absolutely adored it, and I can't wait to see what he has up his sleeve next. This has definitely replaced Everything Everywhere All at Once as my favorite movie of the year thus far, and I'm curious to see how long it will remain on top, or if it will make the top 10 list by the end of the year. And that also wraps up this here video. I'm not always going to do this where I make a video on 2 good movies after making one on a bad film. I'm just testing out these 2-fer videos to see if they're worth continuing. Anyway, that's all I have. See you all for Multiverse of Madness. Can't wait to see Larry Daly show up and make Night at the Museum canon to the MCU.